Universal grammar and the first language acquisition. Now, let's try to understand the arguments put forth by the universal grammar researchers in its favor related to first language acquisition. So, the universal grammar researchers have argued that given the young age at which the learners acquire their first language is quite surprising, because language is not only very abstract, it is also so complex. So if they are saying that children learn the language with the help of an innate faculty, and this innate faculty somehow allows them to disentangle certain rules about how the language is learned, let us see how complex the task is. So look at these examples. So in the first set of 3 examples, Sajid saw himself, Alia went herself, and looking after himself bores Sajid. Now, if a child is listening to this language, the child would say in the first sentences, for instance, that whenever a pronoun comes, a possessive pronoun like himself and herself, it always comes after a noun or after a subject it is referring to. However, we see that in sentence number C, this hypothesis is challenged, because over here the possessive pronoun looking after himself bores Sajid comes before the noun it is representing. Let's have a look at another example. So in this set, for instance, Sajid said that Ali liked himself. Aslam said that Ali went himself. You would say that if you were a child and processing information, somehow subconsciously you would come to this rule that whenever a pronoun is used, a possessive pronoun is used, it refers to a noun or someone who is coming just before it. However, look at the sentence C, and this assumption is challenged. Aslam promised Ali he will come himself. And over here, himself is not referring to Ali or the pronoun that is coming just before it. It is referring to the one that is at the beginning of the sentence. So just imagine the complexity with which a child has to deal with. So having said that it is the innate faculty in the minds of the children only that enables them to deal with this complex task of learning the first language at a very young age and with input which is not comprehensive, they also say that the learning of the first language or the onset of the first language may not necessarily be linked with intelligence. So we cannot possibly say that any child who has learned a language very fast and who has passed through the stages of the learning the language quickly is more intelligent than other children. We have the examples of many famous people who were very slow in learning their first language. Similarly, we also have examples of several children who have cognitive deficits, however, their language develops normally. If we want an example to explain what we are saying, we have this example of children suffering from Williams syndrome. Now, in this problem, which is a cognitive problem, children use sophisticated language and complex structures in the language However, their mental development remains slow in other areas. Similarly, there is this research related to, for instance, Christopher, who could speak and write 15 to 20 languages with varying degrees of proficiency. However, he could not take care of himself because he was mentally retarded in other aspects. So, to link intelligence with language learning, there is little evidence that is always true. So, one has to be careful with children who are not learning the language. It might not be because they are dumb, but because either they are passing through a different developmental stage, or it might relate to some other issue.